What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel here. Today we're going to be looking at the Beta FPV Meteor 65 Tiny Wolf drone. Today's video is going to be a setup video. We're going to show you how to set this up with Betaflight. We're also going to show you how to bind it to your radio and how to do anything you need to do to get this thing up in the air from out of the box. So this one here is the old one that I've had. I actually have a replacement one here. So today we're going to be setting up the new one. This one here has got a couple issues. All we're going to be doing with this is plugging it into Betaflight to get a couple of my settings off of it so that I can swap those settings over to this one. That'll be all that we do with it. What we're going to need to do first, if you haven't already, is you're going to need to download Betaflight Configurator. I'll put a link down in the bottom of the description here, somewhere in the description, for GitHub and the Betaflight Configurator tab. So first thing you want to do, if you don't want to click the link at the bottom, is you can go to Google. So we're going to type releases Betaflight Configurator, and we're going to see here we have one for github.com. That's going to be releases Betaflight Configurator at GitHub. So go ahead and click on that. What that will do is pull up the main Betaflight Configurator download page here. This is going to show Betaflight Configurator 10.7.0, which is the newest one at the time of this video. You can see here it says the latest release. You can look here to see which one you might need to download for which computer system you're operating. So if you're running on Windows like I am, you'd be running the Windows 32 extension. If you're running on Mac, you'd be running this one here. Same thing with Linux and so on. So if you want to scroll down a little bit here, you'll see the download sections here. What you can do is either left click. If that doesn't work, you can right click and save the file. Either way will download that extension file. Once you have that downloaded, all you need to do is open it up and run it, and it will download properly onto your computer. So it's pretty easy to do. Betaflight works pretty easy. It's super simple to get on your computer. Once you have it on your computer and you get it open, it will look just like this. So right here we have Betaflight Configurator, and next thing we're going to do is take our drone. So I'm just gonna go ahead and run you guys through the setup here on this quad. Out of the box, it should bind without any issues. You should be able to just plug in a battery. Usually if you plug in a USB, it will not power the receiver. Usually you have to plug in a battery for the first time to power the receiver. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to have it upside down. We're going to make sure that we plug the battery in the correct way every time. So we have the battery plugged in here, and there is no receiver light lighting up on the bottom. This is a Spektrum quad, and as a Spektrum receiver, this will have the orange light glowing on the bottom as well, just like we're used to on all our other Spektrum receivers. So the first thing we need to do to get this to bind to our remote, it's a pretty simple procedure here. We've already downloaded Betaflight onto our computer, so we have the tool that we need. So we're going to plug in here with our USB. My Betaflight will probably already be connected. Yep. So now we're here in Betaflight, and all we need to do is go to the CLI. Once we're in the CLI, we're going to type is set. We're going to type Spektrum. We can see that the autofill is starting to auto type for us already. We're going to go ahead and select here Spektrum Satellite Bind, and then we're going to type equals space 9. And what that will do is put this receiver into bind mode and allow the remote to now bind to it when we power it on the next time. Hit enter. You can see here that everything worked out fine. We have no errors, no warnings. Next thing we're going to do is type in save and hit enter, and that will restart because I have the auto start enabled, the auto connect. It will auto connect. Go ahead and disconnect. Once we disconnect, we can go back to the quad and unplug the USB for now, since the receiver will not plug in or power on via USB for the first time. I'm not sure why. After it's been powered on once, it seems to work every time after that. That's just what I've noticed here. So we have it plugged in here now, and you can see that we have an orange flashing light here, as we do on all our Spektrum receivers. At least most of them. So I'm going to go ahead and hit my bind button. I'm a little close here for a Spektrum. All Spektrums have this issue when they're too close, that they don't like to bind properly. We'll see if I get lucky here. So it says here that we're binding, but because I'm so close, I have a feeling it was going to fail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold it out away from me and hit the button again. I'll hold it way out over here. Now by doing that, I was able to get a successful bind here. So we're bounded to DSMX signal. We're going to go ahead and hit OK here. And you can see that our orange light is now a solid orange light instead of a blinking orange light, meaning that we're bound to it. Once we're bound, we can disconnect the battery. And we're going to hook the USB cable back up here. And you can see that the receiver light is on now via USB power, where beforehand it wouldn't do that. So now that we have the USB powered on, we have the quad powered on, and we're bound to the quad with our new remote here, we're going to go into Betaflight once more. Once we're in Betaflight here, we're going to go to the Modes tab. This is your Modes tab here, and what your Modes tab does is set basically what switches you're going to use to control what mode on the quad. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select auto for the arm switch. I'm going to set the arm switch here to the switch that I like to use. So we have the arm switch switched here to when I have it in this position, it puts this orange line here, which is inside of the orange slider, which means that it's active. So when I turn it off,
that didn't suck.
It moves the orange line here to the bottom out of the slider. I do run angle mode.
Getting sketchy. Getting loser mode.
So we're going to go ahead and set that in here. So angle mode's set. I usually only use that like if my video turns off, or it's kind of nice on the tiny whoops. When you're racing, you'll use the angle mode quite a bit. So I have angle mode on right now and the switch is on, and then when the switch is off, it will be in acro mode.
Getting sketchy.
So right now, it would be in acro mode. I do not run Horizon mode. I do not recommend that anybody runs Horizon mode. So what I did was I pushed the little X button and got rid of the range and switch setup for that. They put air mode here and they put it on a switch. I'm guessing because it's a tiny whoop, and some people like to put air mode on the switch to keep it from bouncing around, I believe, when you're trying to land and things like that. I've never had any issue with it causing issues to where I didn't be able to enjoy the quad. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn the air mode switch off because I just want air mode to be on all the time. FPV angle mix is another thing we're not going to use at all. Flip over after crash is a very important thing, and that we are going to use. So we're going to go ahead and set that to auto.
Flip mode is on.
And we're going to flip the switch here, which will put that on auxiliary 4. And then next thing we're going to do is check it.
Flip beeper is on.
And then we're going to go, I believe we skipped it. Come back up here to the beeper, and we're going to add a range, and we're going to put the beeper in here.
Is on.
because the beeper is on the same channel as crash mode, flip mode,
Flip mode is on.
what I do is I narrow up the gap in between them just a little bit, so that
Beeper
when I
is
switch
on.
in
Ready to-
between,
Beeper is on.
I have a little bit more room to play with without skipping into the other channels. Don't know if that's something you need to do, but that's something I've always done. So once we have your modes set up, I usually just run 4 modes, especially on something like a Tiny Whoop here. So all you really need is your arm button. You need your angle or acro switch to be able to determine between your 2 modes. I set a beeper on all my quads. There's a couple ways you can do this. I put it on a 3-position switch with the fly crash or the flip crash mode. You can put it on to beep while it's in crash mode. I'm sorry, while it's in crash mode, and then you don't have to have another channel to use the beep or crash mode. You don't have to choose in between the 2 of them. Once we have these picked here, all we're going to do is hit save. Once that's saved, what you'll want to do, since this is your first quad, is come down here to the OSD section. What that's going to be is what it shows you on your screen when you're looking through your goggles. And that's going to be like your battery voltage, or maybe your craft name. And what I did already was copy all mine from my old quad and stick them on here. What you can do is you can click what you would like to use here. There's a lot of options. I usually run average voltage, especially since it's just a 1S. That's all you're gonna need regardless, is 1 cell voltage. I run my crossfire. When I have crossfire, I run my decibel dB value here, or your RSSI value here, and then I usually put my modes here, angle, and then a timer, and then just my warnings pop up here, my little names down here at the bottom somewhere. So I'm just gonna move that, and all you gotta do is click on them, and you can put them wherever you want, all over the screen. Right, they'll stack on top of each other, so if you don't see all of them that you clicked on, there's probably one underneath the other one. Once you're done with that, you're gonna hit the save button. And I don't like that it says Meteor. I'd rather have it say my flight name. Go to the configuration tab here. I don't suggest you touch anything in here if you're not familiar with this tab at all. This is a spot where you can really mess up your quad if you change something and are not familiar with what it's going to do. So all I'm going to do in here is I'm going to raise my motor idle just a little bit because I know where I like it at. So I'm just going to bring it up to 5 here on the Tiny Whoop, because that's where I had the old one at. You probably don't need to touch that. Craft name here is the name that was at the bottom of our OSD there. So what I'm going to do is type in here my craft name. And this is what I like it to display instead. Camera angle, this is a big thing here. I don't recommend running this at all. What that does is it adds yaw movements into your roll movements, which can make it very difficult to learn how to fly and make it very difficult to do certain maneuvers and tricks. So that should be all you have to change here, is put your camera angle at 0, put your own name in here, whatever you want to put in here. And we're just going to come down and look, and we're going to turn on air mode since I turned off the switch. We're going to permanently enable air mode so that it's always on, because that's what I like. That's what most pilots fly. Only a couple people really run air mode on the switch. It's not necessary. It's not something you really need or have to do. After that, you can hit the save button and it will reboot here, and because I have the auto connect selected, it went ahead and auto connected for us. Next thing we're going to do here is I'm going to click the video transmitter tab, and what that's going to do is open up our video transmitter settings. All you're going to need to really adjust here, if anything, All this can be done with the OSD settings, which are your on-screen display settings, which allow you to use your goggles and the display to change settings on the quad. But I always like to do it beforehand while I have it hooked up. That way when I power on my quad and goggles for the first time, it's already on the channel I'm expecting it to be on. I don't have to look for it and change it. So I'm going to go ahead and select here race band. That'll be R band, what you're normally used to seeing. I'm going to put this on channel 7 because that's what I normally run. And I believe these only go up to 25. Somebody told me theirs said 200, but I'm pretty sure it's only 25. I'd have to double check. But that's all you need to do is select your 3 here. You can put them on anything you want. Most popular is going to be a race band, anything from 1 to 8, and then your power you're going to leave at 25 because that's what the BTX is going to output. After that, you're just going to hit the save button here, and what that's going to do is it's going to tell us that now we are on race band 7 at 25 milliwatt BTX power. After that, we can disconnect, and we can go back here to the quad. Unplug it from the computer. Now it will be a little hot, just from being sitting there. Normally, you don't want to leave it plugged into the computer for too long. You definitely don't want to just leave it sitting on your table, powered on for a long period of time with no wind or anything blowing in it. Because once you have this cover on here, once it's all covered and it's sitting down on something, it's just building heat inside of here. And there's nowhere for the heat to go. When you're flying, you're pulling all that heat out of it the whole time. So it's really not an issue. But when you're sitting on the table, you can get a lot of heat build up inside of here from the BTX and the flight controller and everything being so close to each other. So be careful if you have this thing plugged in for too long. It will put a little bit of heavy use on it, I guess would be the best way to say. So once we have everything set up on Betaflight here, we have our remote bound, we have our switches selected. We're just going to make sure our switches are all here in the right direction.
Sketchy.
Everything's in the right spot.
Auto return off.
We don't have that set up on here, so we won't have to worry about that. We're going to slide our battery in here. And we're going to make sure we always plug her in the right way. So the worst thing you can do is plug it in backwards. We got our light on here. We're going to lay her down flat. Like so. I set this switch here as our arm switch to where when we flip it down, the motors will arm. When it's flipped all the way up, the motors will be off. That way if you hit this thing or you're holding it, it won't turn the motors on for you. This here is going to be our arm switch, our mode switch. So this will be this will be stabilized mode, and then that'll be acro mode. And then our next one will be the beeper here.
Beeper is on.
Which little guy's beeping. And then we have flip mode.
Flip mode is on.
And we could test this on the bench. Flip mode's nice because it's going to spin the motors in reverse. And with the quad being like this, it's not going to fly. It's just going to push it down. So I'm going to take this joystick here and I'm going to push it to the left just slightly after you arm it.
Send that shit.
So now that it's armed and it's in crash mode, we can push the stick to the left a little. And we see the 2 left props are spinning reverse, which would, if it was upside down, try to turn it over. And we can check this for all directions. Okay. Once we know that's fine, we're gonna disarm, and we're gonna
ready to fly.
Turn that off. And all we're gonna do is check here. We're gonna arm it.
Send that shit.
You see that everything's working fine. Don't worry if one motor starts spinning slow like that, like you saw mine do. You see it do it again. What's going on here is the quad's actually at a little bit of an angle. So this corner is a little higher than all the other corners. And what it's doing is trying to slow this motor down more than the other ones to keep it level, thinking that it's in the air. You'll see it when it's like that. It's always going to do that depending on how it's sitting, if it's level or not sitting. So everything's working here. The quad's working good. We put it in acro mode. check it out. See if it works. Woo, slide!
Well, that didn't suck.
So she works good. I don't know why everybody puts air mode on a Switch. I mean, I don't think you need it. Air mode on a Switch would keep a bigger quad from jumping around. On a little quad, it's really not going to do anything. So at that point, you're ready to fly. You're all set up. You're bound to your quad. Go ahead and turn my remote off here so she quits yelling at us. So your quad's all set up on Betaflight. You're all bound to your remote. All your channels are set up right. If you have an issue where when you go left, the quad goes right, you need to go into your remote and you need to reverse that channel. It's just that simple. That's all you need to do. If you go forward and your quad tilts backwards, you need to reverse that channel. It's just that simple. And that'll fix any kind of issues you're having like that. I believe that the roll is going to be reverse from what the remote comes back to. At least mine is on the IX12. I'm not sure about the DX6 or DX8. They might be already set up right. That's it, guys. Go out, charge some batteries, and tear it up, man. Let it rip. If you got any questions, leave them down below in the comments. I'll be more than happy to help. If you have the time, if you liked what you saw, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Always appreciate that. You guys rock. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed.